on the Q agenda, President Trump falsely claimed that the U.S. election is rigged. What does that mean for our democracy and for our reputation around the world? We're going to break it down.
Writer-producer from shows such as The Handmaid's Tale, Nancy Drew, and The Purge, Nina Fiore, is here to talk to us about her journey in Hollywood and her future projects. You don't want to miss it.
And activist and social worker Jose Richard Aviles is here to tell us all about his new project, Semilla. All that and more right here on
The Q Agenda. Counting the votes of more than 150 million people, it's an arduous task. Irregularities always exist, both because voters and vote counters are human and make a little bit of mistakes. But let's be very clear. Irregularities are not another word for massive fraud. Mistakes are not a way to steal our election. Facts have not stopped Donald Trump, however, from making outlandish claims entirely, totally unsubstantiated, talking about the election is rigged. Let's talk about it. Joe Biden won the election. It was called, how many painful nights did it take? 4 or 5? I lost track. I was like days, and what were you doing when the election results came in?
I'm a little bit, it's just so weird because what surprises me the most is that, as some of you know, I am from Venezuela, and my little country of 25 million people always keeps on like popping up. And it's, to me, is so incredibly dangerous, that narrative that Donald Trump has created about this election being rigged, when the only thing that happened was that Biden won because he got the most amount of votes.
Yeah, pretty big mandate too. And, you know, I actually turned off Donald Trump after the president-elect Joe Biden was announced. I turned it off because I didn't even let him take me on this roller coaster. There were so many people that were like, oh, what's he going to do? Is he going to turn the power over? Is he going to start to concede? Is he going to start to open up this process? And I knew he was going to do it the whole time. And the reason I knew he was going to do it the whole time was because my eyes are square on Joe Biden's campaign.
Right.
I mean, his campaign has been steadfast, has been consistent, has been calm, has tweeted like once a day, like things like that helped me understand that whatever Donald Trump was doing was the last series, and it's not over, but it was the last part of the reality show that we've been watching for the last 4 years.
I agree. I also kind of tuned out kind of the hoopla of it all as soon as the election came through and we found out who won the presidency. I think for me, it comes down to, we as like the people, the American people, we also have a responsibility to take this serious and not entertain kind of the circus that we've been enduring for the past 4 years. I think now is the perfect time to also transition with this time and kind of take it seriously. I mean, we've kind of also partaken in all of this mess to a certain extent, and kind of giving him this audience. I mean, of course, he's the president of the United States, so we do have to pay attention to what's going on. But I think now is the time to kind of take a breather and, you know, focus on what's to come, which hopefully is a more positive experience in this country.
Yeah, I can't begin to tell you how excited it makes me and how happy to hear you say that on, like, you know, it's not time to like take it seriously and like, you know, just like get rid of all the noise. My concern is, though, is that I have seen what the conversation of a rigged election does to a country, and I've lived it firsthand, and the effect that it has worldwide, particularly to a country like the United States of America, with democracy kind of serves as like the model for so many countries around the world. And now the seed has been planted that the system that the country has does not work. How do we fight that?
And how disrespectful, I think, totally, for the men and women who have served and who have died for this country, but all over the world, spreading this sort of religion of democracy. It's all insulting, is what it is. And this 4 years has been an insult to all of our collective intelligence. It's infuriating. Not only is he saying the election is rigged, he's inviting these state elected officials to the White House to try to get them to not certify the vote, the final count of the vote, when we're winning states by 180,000 votes. Now, this, I don't know who at home, if you follow along, like what a close election means. This is not a close election. Just because one person wins a state or a couple states by more than 12, 14,000 votes does not make it a close election. This election was won by a landslide. any recounts in U.S. history have come back with maybe finding 200 votes wrong. 200. So when you think about 14,000, 10,000, 180,000, this has been nothing but a horse and pony show. It's so sad every second of it. Giuliani, he is just so embarrassing and not able to come out, I think, ever again.
Man, you need a good gay friend. No gay friend would have ever allowed him to like dye the hair.
That's the most innocent thing about him too. It's like weird, oddly, like these inhumane acts by people who are superhuman, you know, with like dye, you know, dripping down their faces and, you know, holding their press conference at, you know, Four Seasons landscaping, total landscaping. These are like horrifying real life things that we all can relate to. But because they've positioned themselves to be so out of touch and so just sure of their ignorance, it's hard to even sympathize and want to sympathize. But we have to, Enrique, we have to, Victor, we have to get back together as a country somehow. I don't know how. I can't wait. I want to fast forward, but just we have to.
I completely agree. And there is certainly so much more we could say, but we are out of time. But when we come back, Nina Fiore joins the conversation, so don't go anywhere. You are watching The Q Agenda.
She's an Emmy-nominated writer and producer with credits on iconic shows like The Handmaid's Tale, Nancy Drew, and The Vampire Diaries. We want to welcome to our show the amazingly talented Nina Fiore. Nina, welcome to our show.
Hi, guys.
We're so excited to have you here. But I want to start from the beginning. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about you and your journey and what brought you all the way to La La Land?
Oh man, that's quite a journey. How long do you have? Well, I started out. I'm from New York, from the Bronx. I went to college at Fordham University, and my dad always said to write your life down, and you're the only one that's living it. So write it down, and that's what one of his aunts told him. And I always watched my dad writing all these journals and everything. And so I started out as a poet and like doing that kind of stuff. And one day I heard that being a screenwriter is like being a life poet. And that really appealed to me, where you got to have your perspective on the world and then, you know, share it with others in that way. And I liked the idea of being a life poet. I was like, that sounds pretty rad. And I just started doing it. And I was really bad at it at first. And I first started out as a PA, a production assistant in New York. And I was working on different shows and different movies and different things. And I was like, you know, a little kid, you know, young kid walking around with a battery and, you know, the little PA headset and stuff, locking up corners. And my friend Dawn Bridgewater used to hire me all the time. Love you, Dawn. So basically I started doing that. And then one day I just, I said, you know, screw it. I moved to LA, and it just sort of snowballed from there. I met my writing partner on the L Word when we were working as assistants, and we kind of always enjoyed each other's writing and would give each other notes and just kind of bonded in the trench, like you do on a show when you're working late hours and stuff. And one day he was like, my writing partner's name is John Herrera, by the way, he's awesome. And he said, hey, you know, I need the voice of a snarky 16-year-old and you're kind of perpetually 16. You want to collaborate on this idea? And I said, sure, why not? And it was super fun, and we had a great time, and it just sort of happened. We worked for also Ethan Reef and Cyrus Forrest, who are two wonderful writers, a writing team that wrote Kung Fu Panda and Sleeper Cell, and they kind of were the ones that were like, hey, he's got one thing, John's got one thing, you've got another thing, you guys should team up, and then we eventually did.
How was your journey like with like family-wise, like, and how did your sexuality affect in any way your decision-making? Like, what about like coming out and coming to terms with yourself? And does that influence anything of your poetry writing? How was that journey?
Well, I think I was a little bit of a late bloomer. I think I was just so, you know, I guess, I don't know. I think I just had a lot of issues as a young teenager. I like suffered from depression, and it's so funny because I think people assume that like when you think about being gay or any of the wonderful, beautiful terms in our rainbow, that it automatically goes to sex. And, you know, I just didn't really think like that as a young teenager. I was too busy, you know, I was training to be a professional athlete, I was too busy just trying to get through the day and just trying to be comfortable in my own skin, and I never really put two and two together, anything to do with my sexuality, really. It just didn't really dawn on me until much later. I came out at 17, actually around Thanksgiving, to my mom in the driveway while we were shoveling snow.
Oh, wow.
And and no one talked about it. It was like I just said it, and then my mom asked questions, and then like I never talked about it again. And with my dad, it was a whole other story. My dad, we were in his Plymouth Scamp, a 1972 Plymouth Scamp with dual exhaust. You heard the car before you saw it. And we were on the corner of Jerome Avenue and I believe Fordham Road, and I came out to him, and he was so upset that he didn't realize I was gay sooner, because I never liked dresses and I always wanted to play in the dirt, and like those very stereotypical things. So, it's been really nice to have both sides. I've had, at different times, either parent has struggled with different things, but, I was always allowed to express myself, which was pretty cool.
Well, that's awesome, and I have lots of questions in my head about your time on the L Word, of course, like any good lesbian, queer, homosexual on the show, but we're going to take a break real fast because Nina has been a part of the writing staff for a hit show. You may have heard of it, Handmaid's Tale, and we're going to talk more about that when we come back. You're watching The Q Agenda. Thanks for tuning back in and for being with us. If you've been listening to Nina's career and journey, you've heard that she came to LA and she sort of fell into all these awesome assistant jobs and got connected with where she was supposed to be. And so we're really glad you're here to continue that journey with us on the Q Agenda, Nina. So thanks again for being here. The Handmaid's Tale. Man, that is what is on the tip of everyone's tongue. What in the heck happened? All of a sudden I was watching season 1 and then I couldn't watch season 2 because the Trump administration took over and everything got way real and way applicable. And I wanted to shrink. Please, okay, tell us how you got the opportunity or how it happened, and then just let us know what it was like during that sort of transition time when you started realizing that art is copying life, or is life copying art, or what?
Well, Bruce Miller, the wonderful showrunner and creator of the show, he gave John and I, my writing partner, our first writing job on Eureka and Alphas, and we were on a show called Blood Drive, which is also a really great show, very different than anything else we've ever worked on. Really crazy, cool horror show. And we were about to finish up, and Bruce called us, and he was like, hey, I'm about to embark on this new journey. And he sent us the script, and he's like, are you guys interested in, coming in? And we read it, and we were like, oh my God, The Handmaid's Tale, of course. And, Bruce is such an elegant, wonderful writer, and it's just one of the most beautiful scripts we've ever read. I don't think you can ever be prepared for what happens when, because you don't really, we don't have a crystal ball, so everything that's happening now, we swear to God, like, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't like being this relevant.
We're wondering, we're like, wait, honey, could you see the future? What's going on?
We don't like being this relevant. Wow, I don't even know what to say about it other than it's.
Is it hard?
I'm just happy it's over.
But is it hard for you to work in that real life being so heavy and the news being so overwhelming, and then going into the writer's room and writing something that's sort of dystopian and dark, and what was that balance hard for you? How did you?
It is hard. It's one of those items where I eat a lot of chocolate. I try to eat my favorite things in the writer's room, things that are comforting. I don't think I personally realize how difficult it is until after the season is done, and then I go, whoa, that was an experience. The cool thing is that our writer's room is actually, you wouldn't know it by what's on screen, but it's actually incredibly funny and very light. So everybody's always joking. We're always, our jokes are quite funny, at least I think so, and Bruce is one of the funniest people I've ever met. And so you'd be surprised sort of the levity that's in that room while we're playing in such dark paint. And I will say the research is very intense, and there's been a couple of times where I've had to research some things, and I'm just like, oh man, I need a teddy bear. I need to go cuddle, and I need a cuddle puddle of puppies.
I know that you have a couple of new projects that you're working on right now. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what's coming up?
Well, we have a really cool show. I'm not sure how much I can talk about it, but John and I created a really cool show based on the book, and it's going to be an amazing, cool experience set in 1877. And I think I could talk about it. It's like basically multiracial, multicultural, an LGBTQ, like amazing, awesome, cool Western. And so, yeah, we're working on that. We have a couple of other projects, this really cool animation called Soul Keepers, which is about, they're sort of like Grim Reapers that come and protect souls from like demons, and yeah, super rad. It's gonna be fun, and it kind of spans like all kinds of timelines and everything, so there's people from all different timelines, and we get to explore all different types of topics, and also kind of make, I mean, I know death, I know it's such a dark subject, and especially in the middle of a pandemic, but you know, it's kind of bringing back a healthy respect for death and sort of, you know, playing in that paint and how it makes the joy of life that much sweeter. Yeah, we kind of into some wacky stuff, and you know, and then we're doing a really cool feature about the Serbian-Bosnian War and an incredible soldier that fought during the war and helped create some really amazing some peace and save some lives, and so we've got a lot on our plate, which is like,
I'm over here like I'm writing a lesbian Christmas movie.
I love that. Oh my God, I love lesbian Christmas.
Well, you'll definitely have to be back. We want to thank Nina for joining us, and when we come back, Jose Richard Aviles is joining us, so don't go anywhere and stay with us in the Q Agenda.
Social worker, activist, poet, and writer Jose Richard Aviles never holds back on expressing his point of view through art. With a poetic dance performance titled Callejera and his poetry book Semilla, he invites everyone to open their hearts and their minds to the idea of inclusion, equality, and acceptance. We want to welcome Jose. Welcome to the show.
Gracias.
We're so excited to have you. I am a huge fan of your performances, and anybody and everybody that follows you on social media knows that watching you on social media is a party. And I love your like comments here and there. Sometimes you throw a little shade and everything, but there's so much that I want to talk about, but let's start with like your performance art and Callejera, which to me is so interesting, how like through body movements you express yourself. Tell me a little bit about that and that journey.
Yeah, so Callejera was the first piece, and Callejera was really collecting all of the stories of my childhood as someone who grew up riding the bus. In particular, there's a monologue there called Tío Metro, and it's sort of a story about being an urban planner and going to school in a program that was primarily non-people of color and people who were not from Los Angeles. And every time they asked me to give them a tour of LA, I always talked about the buses, because I grew up as a bus rider. And people were like, what, the bus? As if riding the bus was something, you know, not common. And so Callejera is all those stories and bringing them together. And then toward the end of the piece, I think the biggest thing that I learned was that Callejera was about the birth of a new gender, a gender pronoun, Callejera, that explained the relationship between being a femme and being from the hood. Like, just because she's cute and glam don't mean she's not from South Central. We can drink martinis and 40s in the same city.
I love it. I love it. So tell me a little bit about your poetry and your writing. When you're writing this poetry, you know, Semilla started as a book, and now it's growing into something else much more. Well, the book is very interesting, but I love where the journey's taking you with it.
Yeah, so I am a dancer and a choreographer. That's how I was trained. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't honor the people who brought me into this space. And I went to open mic Chingona Fire, and I saw Jessica Salgado perform there and read Corazón, and I was like, oh my God, I saw myself in the words. And to me, I went into poetry because I focus on cadence. And to me, cadence is the choreography of word. I just think in the terms of movement and cadence and rhythm and how you speak and the way voice sounds. That to me was very fascinating. So how I tend to write, I actually record myself and I just echar desmadre and just talk into nothingness and then record it. And in the transcription process, I begin to edit. And so that's how I went into writing, and Semilla started like that. But as I went into Semilla, you know, I know how the poems sound on paper, but my affair is the stage. I love the stage. And so now Semilla is becoming this doble quinceañera as I'm about to turn 30 and looking good while doing it. But I missed the stage, and so I had to find a way to recreate the stage. Just because we don't have a theater doesn't mean I can't create my own stage.
Of course,
So
absolutely.
what would you say your why is? All this beautiful stuff, but like what makes you want to engage this way, so authentically with the world?
Now that I know that adult Jose Richard can take care of myself, it's now my obligation to make little Richard's dreams come true. And so I've always dreamt to being on stages. It was not something that I got to see, and you know, representation is a very big thing. And now that we have representation, I also have to ensure that we are also being very conscious in the intention that we put out into the world. I think now, being a young activist, I spoke in front of 250,000 people in 2009 at the, you know, for the Equality Across America March in Washington, D.C. I say that if social media were as big as it is now, would have been the Greta Thunberg of the time. But, you know, it's not what happened. But now that I have this background, as well as how do I bring also my knowledge into the work that I do. So the why, I love people. I love people. I love place. I love being from LA. And why not? And one of the lines in the poems that I say is like, love is the currency I'll never run out of.
I love this, and I want to hope that your family was always supportive of watching you grow and become yourself, or what was that like? No?
My mom, my parents are supportive, and it's a journey, right? And I think a lot of it is, I think some of it has to do with my queerness and being very unapologetic, and that's totally fine. And you know, they have learned to accept me. I think that also being the oldest and the first one to go to college, that my parents have this understanding of like, well, damn, Richard is the one that we got, and Richard's the one that's gonna help save us or take care of us when we're older. So now that I know that, I get to be unapologetically me.
Well, awesome. And Jose, you have such a beautiful spirit. And to any moms and dads that might watch this, or parents for figures, look how beautiful your child can grow up to be. We want to thank Jose for coming. And you can follow him, if you'd like to, at Soy Nalgona on Instagram. And for more on us, don't forget to visit latv.com. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.